Hi, this is Colin. Let's continue on our DevSecOps journey. Now, before we go and look in detail at all of the checks that we've completed on this pull request, let me return to the DependaBot integration. Let's go back to the main code view in our GitHub repo. And you can see this yellow security alert at the top of the repo. It says that we found security vulnerabilities in one of the dependencies. Now, if I open up the console again, you'll see that we got the same message when we did a push to this repo. Now, the only reason I'm seeing that is because I am a code owner on this repo. Let's go and click on View Security Alert. I hinted at this in the first video, and we can see that there is some kind of vulnerability in Bootstrap. There's even a label saying it's of moderate severity. Let's click on that to see the full alert. So we can see that GitHub opened this alert on October 21st, 2019. Now that's fairly old. I keep this here for demo purposes. If this was a real repo or if this was a real application, I would of course have fixed this a lot earlier. But we can see that there is a vulnerability in Bootstrap 3.3.2, and GitHub is suggesting that we update to 3.4.1 to resolve this vulnerability, or to mitigate this vulnerability. We can see the remediation here, and this has opened up our packages.config file and is updating the package version for Bootstrap to 3.4.1. And in the bottom section, we can see the CVE details. And this has a link as well to the full report for this CVE. Not only has GitHub notified us of this vulnerability, but if we look in pull requests, we'll see that there's actually a pull request created that is going to do this change for us. So let's click on that pull request. We can see that this pull request has been logged by DependaBot on behalf of GitHub. And so DependaBot is the functionality that does the vulnerability scanning. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see that checks have been triggered. Some checks haven't been completed yet, but you can see that we can run unit testing and CI/CD and even deploy our application based on this PR that's submitted from DependaBot. Now, if we look at the files changed that were added to this pull request, we can see the bump in version from 3.3.2 to 3.4.1 for Bootstrap. And if our checks have completed, like unit tests and builds, we can then merge this PR in, and we would have closed the vulnerability on the security. I'm going to leave that open again just for demo purposes. Now let's go back to our main pull request and look at some of the other changes. Let's look at these checks. There's a couple of checks here called Slacker, and they've got a little Octocat icon. These are GitHub actions that have triggered off of the pull request action or pull request event. And then there's some LGTM checks here. LGTM stands for looks good to me. You can see the little monkey icon. That's Semmle integration. And then there's some Azure pipelines that have run. And we'll open up that Azure pipeline shortly. Let's take a look first at LGTM. I'll cover pipelines and actions in a later video. Now, there's two things I want you to see here. LGTM has language awareness. So there's LGTM analysis for JavaScript. And this message is telling us that no code changes were detected since I didn't change any JavaScript files. So the check was skipped. However, I did change a C# file. If you remember back to the demo where I changed the source code, I changed a message inside of a system console write line, just so that we would have some change in C#, specifically to trigger the LGTM analysis for C#. So if we click on details, it'll open up the action. We can see that there are no alerts new to this check-in. But let's go and view this on LGTM so we can see the full analysis. Again, we can see that the pull request has been detected by LGTM and it's run its analysis. For C#, the analysis ran and there were no new or fixed alerts. And for JavaScript, no changes were detected, so the previous results still apply. So what exactly was run? Well, let's go to queries and have a look at some of the queries that were run. So we can filter on various packs. Again, because there are C# and JavaScript code files in this repo, those are the two that have been configured for this repo. And we'll just filter onto built-in C# queries. And there are a lot of queries that have been run here. You can customize the severity and whether or not the results are displayed, but there are hundreds of queries here. These are all CodeQL queries that come from the community to help detect vulnerabilities, for coding, best practices, and so on. Let's go and look at some of the alerts. Well, there are 3 errors, 9 warnings, and 2 recommendations. Most of these have to do with the web config file. For example, we can see the configuration file is missing the X-frame options setting. Down here we can see that in our web config in source control, we have compilation debug set to true. Now I'm not too concerned about that because when I deploy to Azure App Services, this is automatically removed for me as part of the Azure Pipelines task. There's a custom errors mode set to off, which is the default. Again, we can look at all of these in detail. There are some other interesting analysis results here. For example, here's a variable called email, which is being set and initialized, but it's never used. And so not only is CodeQL detecting vulnerabilities and security errors, but also coding best practices. And you can configure which rules are run against your repo.